In 2015, the United Nations established 17 Sustainable Development Goals to provide a shared blueprint for peace and prosperity. At UCL, we believe universities should be playing a leading role in addressing these goals through equitable partnerships and global impact. By collaborating globally and across boundaries, we can make more progress to tackle issues such as climate change and inequalities. In 2020, UCL's Global Engagement and Grand Challenges began planning a joint conference to explore how we could move forward for cross-disciplinary and beyond-boundary activities for the goals. But in March, the COVID-19 pandemic struck. Like much of the world, we had to go virtual. This meant we could bring together over 68 expert voices from 15 countries virtually to have critically important conversations on the role of the university and the importance of working together for the goals, with just 10 years left for action. Over 1,000 people joined from 58 countries. The conference brought together people from around the world and across organisations. In this film, we present the key themes and takeaways from the conference and a way forward after COVID for the next decade of action.
There's a desperate need for international solidarity, and we've seen precious little of it.
Human behaviour has got us into these crises, and changing human behaviour will be necessary for getting us out of them.
Almost everybody's talked about gender, about class, about age, about disability. In other words, the intersectional character and the diversity of communities, which, if we're going to do anything real for change, has to be recognized.
What does it mean about doing things differently, going beyond the status quo, because the status quo is not working?
We're at a crossroad, and the question is, what road are we going to choose?
We have two potential futures that we need to look at. One is this idea of build back better, and I think that the back says it all. What we really maybe should be talking about is build forward better.
So what we are seeing today with COVID is actually an SDG crisis. It started around health, but it's kind of permeated into pretty much everything, into poverty, into gender justice, into dealing with a whole range of crises.
The SDGs were developed and supported by UN member states precisely to address the multi-layered inequalities that COVID has revealed so starkly.
Equity and justice, for me, are kind of the key challenges which face us during COVID, post-COVID, as we move forward to a just future.
One of the things I say about COVID is it's shown us how not to do it. We do not want to have to respond to climate change overnight.
The lockdown is not the way for sustainable growth. So I think it's very important for us, even as environmentalists, when we were talking about the blue skies, we reiterated again and again that this is not a sustainable way to think about blue skies. But what it does tell us is the way ahead. And the way ahead clearly is that why did we get blue skies during the lockdown? Because the cars were off the road and the factories were shut.
If we're going to get to net zero, we really have to tackle the major elephant in the room, which is how do we generate energy?
This shouldn't be seen just as what not to do. As important as it is to replace, private transport with public transport, it has to be seen as a new way to reimagine how we actually want to live and bring as many different voices to the table.
It's not that we lack an agenda or prospectus for what this world could be like. I think the SDGs set that out. But the key thing is the leadership now from governments, from corporates, from academia, from across the board to actually make something happen.
We need to change our politics, we need to change our laws, we need to change our cultures and therefore our behaviours so we can have a world that we want to actually live in.
All of these issues we're not going to fix until we really take a long, hard look at what is sort of a crisis which underpins all of these, and that is this information crisis.
And we need to broaden our lens to be able to tackle the challenges that face us. I believe that us as university academics can work with others in civil society to begin to change the narrative so that we can craft solutions that take multiple perspectives and not just what is possible in this narrow lens.
What is the role of the university in addressing the SDGs? What can we as staff and students do?
We live in a claim-saturated world, and in a world in which populist politicians give simple solutions, simple answers to very complex problems. And it's never been more important to be able to harvest the intellectual resources of the university as a whole, and particularly a comprehensive university like UCL, to make sure that the work of the university, both in its teaching and research, is making a difference.
UCL has always been a challenge-oriented university, trying to get all the different departments and the faculties to constantly be thinking about the relevance of the work, of the research, of the teaching, to actually solve the challenges that we have ahead of us as a society. And what's amazing is that globally, since 2015, we actually have the Sustainable Development Goals to focus us on what those challenges are. There's 17 goals, there's 169 targets underneath them, but we really need to transform those goals into an uncomfortable thorn in the side for academia, for businesses, and for the state.
Universities have demonstrated to the world during COVID-19 why their expertise matter and why international collaboration in higher education is needed to solve the world's pressing challenges.
So the real question is, over a 10-year or 20-year period, are you not only improving your own ranking and sort of meeting the goals as far as the SDGs are concerned, is your work making your city, your community, and your country different?
And that has to acknowledge, that universities on whole, the truth, are not the only producers of knowledge. They are one among many others. There are many other knowledges that need to be acknowledged, valued, and so on. And we need to talk to them in a much more agile way than we actually do right now.
What we want are transdisciplinary partnerships of equivalence. So we think about the way that we're working, not just with community members, but bringing businesses, bringing policymakers directly into the question of formulating research questions, designing and conducting research, and then acting together.
As an educational establishment, one of our core roles is actually to galvanize and make use of that energy that young people have for impacting on the future of our planet.
What I really value in university education, more than the actual academic knowledge that you get, is how it can sometimes empower you to take action. We have, despite the environmental emergency, many students who will graduate and get their degree without ever hearing of the SDGs or of the climate crisis or how it works, even though these are key competences for the future.
Without getting the students on board, without getting them involved, everything will fall apart, because they are the voice of the future. And I think that if we don't educate students from kind of first year undergraduate level upwards, then really the university isn't fulfilling its role.
Universities are uniquely placed to support the cross-disciplinary research and thinking which could make SDG progress possible. I'd also say to universities, use your voice. You're respected in your societies and communities. We need to hear from you on the cutting edge thinking of the day on how to build a better world.
We can't do this alone. We need to work together beyond boundaries to address the goals.
How can partnerships be used to overcome challenges and reach people in communities all over the world?
The world is facing multiple complex problems that require scientists to collaborate across disciplines, cultures, and geographical boundaries.
We won't tackle the existential challenges threatening the world unless we collaborate across borders, and absolutely that does mean much greater collaboration from the global north to the global south, and much more equal collaboration from the global north to the global south.
We have to go beyond just wanting to publish impact factor journal papers. We really have to create equitable partnerships with partners.
No matter what you do in your laboratory, if you really want to have impact, you have to have some translational research.
And actually what the SDGs should be forcing us to think about is, what does it look like to have a market shaping, a market co-creating system where you have public, private, third sector, citizen organizations really working together.
We can't do this alone, however big you are. So we have to come together and we have to develop networks.
often groups of people, older adults and children, seem to be pitted against each other in the climate change and the sustainability debate. But actually, we've missed a lot of opportunities to build alliances, the idea of future generations and actually adults and children working together for future generations.
We're all in agreement that it's collective action which is missing.
History shows us that the more organisations link up with others, the more longevity they have.
Want to learn more about how we can address the UN SDGs together? Watch the full conference sessions on our YouTube channel and follow us on Twitter. We are planning the next Beyond Boundaries for 2022. Sign up to our mailing list to stay connected.